Good evening. I'd like to call the Rochester School Board, Rochester City Council Joint Building Committee to order at 6:01 p.m. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on to our next item for the approval of the September 13th, 2023 minutes, I would like to take a moment to thank Councilor Steve Bowden for serving on the Joint Building Committee. He has resigned, and I'd like to welcome Councilor Tim Fontenot in his place. Thank you, Tim. Next item is the approval of the September 13th, 2023 minutes.
So moved.
There being a motion and a second, is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is our architect update. Right.
All right, so since we last met last month, we've had several engineering coordination meetings. We have coordinated with Alex and Ty and Bond on the civil and floor plan. We've actually visited and walked the site. We visited the East Rochester School this afternoon to look at the finishes, since that was your most recent elementary school that you built. And we've also had the 3 staff review meetings on Thursdays in September, so we've got some valuable input from those. So Brad's going to walk you through the updates that we've done to the plan since you last saw it.
So we've been evolving what I'll call the block diagram, as it were, into a more refined building plan and design. And so we've been putting some adjustments to things. There's been a little bit of movement in terms of the organization of the rooms downstairs, but otherwise the general organization of the building hasn't changed in the last month. We've been keeping true to the common spaces with the gym, cafeteria, kitchen, and administration nurse in the front area, sort of the after hours area, and the instructional classroom wing in this area.
We did also increase the lobby just a tad here to give a little more breathing room outside the cafeteria and the gym area. That was one of the comments we heard last time.
And then based on some of the stakeholder feedback from the faculty and discussions with the superintendent, we did a little adjustments over here by the library, basically with the sequence of the rooms having the flex classroom directly adjacent to the library with a movable partition wall, a panel partition wall. That will lend some flexibility to curriculum with the computer lab directly adjacent to the flex room. So there's a lot of opportunity for team learning in that arrangement. So that pushed the OTPT down closer to the corner in the main entrance area of the building. But we still have our creative arts wing here, first grade kindergarten on the end, and our room for expansion at the far end.
We've also started coordinating the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, because we will need a fire pump. So the engineers have confirmed that that space is adequate, and it may be a little bit, have a little bit more room to spare, not a lot, but we do need a fire pump room that has a door to the exterior off the back. And site-wise, when we get to the civil update, you'll see the parent drop-off comes, so you'll see in a few moments too, the 3 options that we have for this nice covered canopy where the students will be dropped off and then they can walk to the main entry or go to the play field that's right down here.
We've also added a little placeholder here outside the library for an outdoor classroom to give some flexibility to and some indoor-outdoor use for educational functions. The second floor is very similar. So really we're just getting into refinements here, adding more detail to the building and making sure we've got our partitions in the right place, and doors, etc. So started to show cubbies and things like that, some cubby options, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. Started to highlight some of the exterior window areolas and where they might go for DOA. So, I'm not getting the whole slide, but what we've done is essentially kind of there are a few options for you to consider for a building exterior appearance. As we turn this diagram into a building and we're refining it, we wanted to look at the vocabulary of the exterior of the building, look at some different material options, and discuss those with you and get your feedback and decisions on which direction you're most comfortable with and what you would like in your school. So what we're looking at here are three options that essentially are a traditional, which would be the top one, or option A, a more what we call a timber model pitch type of design, which gives a more mountain feel, so referencing back to the mountains of architecture of New Hampshire, and then something that's more contemporary in the design as the option C.
And it's important for us, one, we've shown you options to kind of choose, but tonight we're trying to get a direction from you on which way to go, because our structural engineer and mechanical engineer need that information to go down one path so that they're not designing three separate buildings. So if at all possible, it'd be great to get a preferred kind of direction tonight. And we're going to go through them more.
Oh, Mark, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, we have several slides
Yeah.
of more information. That was the overview.
Got it.
So our option A, as I mentioned before, is a traditional vernacular. And I'm just going to read my points. I apologize, but I don't want to miss anything important. It has a traditional New England style school reference to it, which is the pitched roof over the academic building. So we have a gable end here. We were thinking that to accommodate mechanical systems and so forth, what we can do is we will cut out on the backside where you wouldn't see it of this pitched roof to be able to place equipment. So it sort of acts like a mansard roof or a screen, but at the same time giving that more traditional reference of a New England style building. We're also showing, and we'll show a little later on, that there's some traditional break to this gable roof. The paneling on the side of the building is a robust, resilient metal paneling, but it has a clapboard profile to it to give a nice reference to something that's more traditional. Corbel brick bands down at the brick area of the building. We have precast concrete bands going across over the windows, and ground-faced CMU concrete masonry units, which have a very nice look. They're not just painted CMU like you see on the wall behind you, but it actually has a nice ground-faced look to it, and they come in many different colors. Nice way to break up a building. We take that up to the window height. Very traditional type of looking double-hung window with the grills at the top to kind of break it up. And a colonnade at the front entrance here, which is also very traditional. We have cupolas that signify the end of the canopy, sort of like the gateway to the school. And then a larger one that sort of is very intuitive in signifying the entrance to the building. And these can be, we can be playing around with this and refining it, but we wanted to try to get a general vocabulary together. A nice arched colonnade type of look with some brick piers and accents. And if we go to the next slide, we go a little more in this option. Dave, could you go to the next slide for us?
Yep.
Oh, he's there. That is the next slide.
There we go. Sorry. So this was the end of that gable of the academic building we were talking about. The library's here, or classroom. This is the entrance with the canopy beyond. And then we're seeing a close-up here of the canopy with the colonnade, which I think is a very nice traditional approach to the building. We're looking at a base here, which we recommend bases at brick to be where it's touching pavement, that we have a granite base because it's very resilient to the salt. The CMU doesn't do quite as good a job, and the brick really gets deteriorated by the modern salts that we use on the sidewalks and the roads. So that's what we're seeing here for the culinary. But we wouldn't want to use that everywhere. It gets a little expensive. And then the next slide, option B. So this is the timber monopitch approach that we were talking about before. So it's kind of got a mountain architecture look to it with timber colonnade. We were talking about the colonnade in the front of the building with timber-like columns, which would be a composite mono sloped roofs. So instead of having a gable or flat portion, it's actually pitched this way. Over the cafeteria, we pitched the roof so that we take advantage of the nice views with a much higher roof wall that looks out over the wetlands and the woods. So it's pitched toward the face. Excuse me. While we reverse that pitch right over here at the entrance to kind of intuitively call out the edges of the building. Flat roof over the academic wing, so very different from our traditional look that we're looking at in option A. But still, we're keeping some of these important elements that we talked about. All of these options have the same academic offerings and the same layout internally. So there's no real difference in that regard. Next slide, please. Make sure we're on some water. So this is the look from the end of the building. You can see we've changed over from this gable and roof to sort of a strong cornice look, at flat roof. And again, at the entrance with the timber columns, which are more maintenance. They're a warmer look. They can be a little more friendly in that regard with the natural woods, but at the same time, operationally, they can be a little more expensive on maintenance. And last option, C. Now this is a more contemporary look. We just wanted to kind of go far afield here and look at something that's a little bit more modern. So what we're looking at here is over the academic wing, although this is a gable roof, it's a bent standing metal seam roof, which you see some of that in some recent architectural design work, which frames a clapboard profile metal panel system with opportunities for different colored metal panel clear story fields above the window. So this is not transparent, it's just a different color. We can play with the colors as in elementary school, so it's just a fun little thing to do, but still modern lines. You can see there's still some flat roof, which we're accenting around here, and that a gable roof over the administration area to kind of break up that form and make it a little more friendly. Obviously, the canopy really stands out. It's quite provocative with angled columns, which actually has a Nordic or a Finnish reference with metal screen over the front of the canopy. It's a bent metal screen, which is translucent and it's perforated, so you're actually looking through that. Let's see what I missed here. And that's pretty much it. Oh, thanks very much, Steve. And the last slide. So this is where we get a closer look at those colored metal panels over the windows. These have to be policeman windows that we were drawing in. Those could be changed up in the case with a slightly more modern look to it. And more sleek profiles with the gable instead of traditional option A profiles. Then the colonnade is, again, very sleek looking. We also have a stamped concrete brick patterning to the sidewalk. Wanted to try to play with it a little bit. Give it a river look. It's hard to see these renderings. Excuse me. And again, hard to see in the renderings, but easier to see in floor plans. We also ribboned the wall next to the walkway to kind of give, we were trying to reinforce the fluidity concept, Salmon Falls Road, kind of playing with that concept a little bit with a river or a stream and so forth. So the wall here actually undulates next to the walkway. It's a wood paneled, right now it's strong as a wood panel, but it could be multiple materials, with a bench seat in front of it. So someplace away from mom and dad, where you can actually sit down and cover from the weather. And I think that's our last option slide.
So why don't we break there and just get some comments on,
Paul?
Nice job. Couple quick things specifically to more Mr. Toddy and you guys. Mr. Toddy, with the pitch of the roof in option B, do you have any concerns about that with water runoff and snow?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The water's gonna shed and we'll control that as it does.
Anticipated how you see fit. And then the question for you guys is the wood timbers are very nice. Have you done that in another school? Any idea what the cost of maintenance would be on something like that? What type of wood would you think about using?
we have, we've done it on several projects. It works best if you stain it rather than paint it. Fir is a nice, warm, beautiful wood that we like to see. It's structurally very strong, it's warm, but we could do several different mock-ups and look at the different opportunities.
If we could go back to option A, I'd like to talk about the pitch roof briefly. And this is the perfect slide, actually, the next one. This roof here actually doesn't extend to the far side of the facade.
Sorry, I was actually talking about where the kids walk, the
Pitch roof where the kids
But
yeah.
there's a pretty wide green strip here, so
Oh,
we'd have a
right.
drip strip.
I was more worried about the snow and water coming off the canopy, and specifically in design.
The canopy would have an internal drain.
Okay, as long as there's a mechanism where
Yes.
the snow and water was not beating against
Right.
the brick or concrete. Okay, thank you, Ingrid, sorry.
Tim?
Sure, so just kind of for practicality, is there much of a cost difference between any of the options in building costs and then in maintenance costs?
So the flat roof option, I don't know if we can go back to the slide that has all three maybe. The flat roof option is the most conservative in terms of cost.
And
That is this one. I mean, we could go even more conservative and not have this and this, you know, and make it all flat. That's the cheapest. To do some, you're going to have a mass for the gym anyway, to do a little bit for the cafeteria. I mean, Harvey is here tonight. They're the construction manager and they'll be pricing this, and that will be part of why we kind of stop in November with a design so that they can price it up to make sure we're okay. Because if we're not okay in terms of the price, then we get to go back and change and tweak it so that we are on budget. I would say this probably is the most expensive, just because there's a lot going on. It's not as traditional, you have more masses here. This one's kind of the, you know, not too cheap, not too expensive, but kind of right in the middle. But that being said, we can take elements from each of the designs and try, if you like one thing here and this, we can come back and show a fourth option.
and for maintenance, ongoing, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, roofs, et cetera, is there one that has a longer life?
Well, your flat membrane roof, your black roof that you see everywhere, right? The single ply, that's a 20-year roof system. Unless you want to spend a little bit more money and get a 30-year warranty, but frankly, the difference between a 20 and a 30-year is the piece of paper warranty that you get. The product isn't that different. Generally speaking, it's a 20-year. Your metal roof system is a 40-year roof system. It's not necessarily the warranty, but that's what they're telling the life of the roof really is. I think there's a lot of truth behind that. Sometimes these roofs can need a little roofs in, but it's gonna hold up a long time if you maintain it well, metal roof system.
And besides the roofs, are there any other of the material differences or
Sure.
design differences that cause more maintenance?
Right, so your brick, your masonries, they're gonna hold up really, really well. The granites are gonna hold up really, really well. We're talking about metal panel systems with a 22 gauge metal siding, and that's a very robust system. If you're not throwing rocks at it, it's gonna do really well. And this is a type of location that holds up quite well. The timber, on the other hand, is kind of a weak point. It needs more maintenance than the other items. Anytime you, also if you look at some of these things like when the metal, we're looking at this third option with the metal columns hit the ground, right? That's a weak point. So this is a conceptual design. We would want to design in a base to that so that that column isn't actually hitting the ground. It's probably going to sit on a plinth or a base or a column base that can resist some of the corrosive salts and so forth. So those are weak points in certain designs versus others. But all three of these are commercial designs of their own, intended for institutional use.
Alex?
I noticed that you said on option A that having the granite at the bottom of the posts helps with the harsh snow melt like that, which can be a problem for the brick. But on option B, it looks like, is the walkway brick, and would we have issues with the snow melt on that brick on the walkway and then on the timber?
So the walkway is actually, it looks like a brick walkway. You're talking about the walking surface itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually a precast concrete paver that looks like brick.
Okay.
So it's actually intended for that use. It's a great question.
Paul?
As much as I enjoy the canopy idea, not canopy, the gable, I think the gable is very attractive, it's nice. Is there a benefit to not hiding equipment, but weather, limiting the equipment, is that a benefit
Yes.
for us?
Yes.
Because we'd be sacrificing solar space, right, where we can put panels, to where we can kind of hide equipment, so I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
that the value
So
add there. Does that make
there
sense?
is a benefit to enclosing mechanical systems. You know, they are longer lasting, and our mechanical engineer will be here next month at this meeting, so they can talk for hours about it. It is money to add that to the budget, but it is gonna prolong the life. It's much easier for maintenance to happen, because you're not going out there in the middle of winter with 3 feet of snow on the roof. And the other benefit is it creates a different scaled aesthetic for the building for these younger kids. So it looks more like a house, it doesn't look like a flat roofed
I'd
building.
love to talk about solar for a second, because
Oh, yeah.
it's a great question. So, in my personal opinion, this is a great opportunity for solar, actually having a pitched roof. It's a great orientation. It actually is like a southeast
That is-
exposure.
Yeah.
You gotta be really careful about where all your vents are coming through the roof, all your mechanical systems and so forth. But if this roof is acting as a screen for all of that, it's actually creating a substructure for your solar system and pitching to the right angle of a solar array. So it's actually a wonderful opportunity. Standing metal seams roofs on top of that are actually the perfect mounting system, in my view. You've kind of created a mounting system to clamp to. They actually use the standing seam to clamp the panels, or the rails for the panels, I would say. We also have solar opportunities on these larger flat roofs, especially the gym, because you don't have any, there's no piping coming through that roof, it's just a gym, right? You don't have plumbing that's gonna get through there, not tons of penetrations. So we can be looking at solar opportunities at the gym as well as the academic wing with that sort of option.
And Dave, earlier today, we had a meeting with the engineers, had a fantastic idea of this canopy in the front that the kids see, to actually have that be, PV, rather than build up that structure, just like some car parks you see that are covered, do that for the canopy.
So depending on which one of these options you want us to go, we can then look at furthering or leveraging those opportunities that fit within the design.
So I really like option A for several reasons. The cupolas really tie in with Salmon Falls Road, with the farms and just the country road. I like that. I also like the aesthetics of it, but more importantly, on the right side of the building, having all of the maintenance enclosed is respectful to our abutters, which are right on that side. So I think the more we can minimize the sound and the looks for them as well, being in their backyards, those are things that really stand out to me. Matt?
As much as Paul's not gonna like me saying this, I like option A too. I think it's a classic look. I love that tower. It draws your attention there, that's where the kids' drop-off is. That's where the pickup is for kids after school, and whatnot. And for the same reasons, I like the roof line, and I was thinking the solar panel, like that's definitely a southern facing roof, so that would be perfect for solar as well. And also for the noise for our neighbors, I think it's perfect. And I love that look of the granite bottom of the post with the brick above it. I think that would be the longest lasting option with the least maintenance down the road. So you wouldn't have to stain it, you wouldn't have to weatherproof wood or what have you, but as long as you keep up with the brick maintenance every, 12, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, I think it would be fine. The other thing with that tower there at the entrance, that shows this, that allows the sun to penetrate through, right? So would that go into the lobby, or is that just on the walkway underneath
We
it?
could extend it so that it did have light in the lobby as well.
So we actually could turn it into instead of having a hip roof, we could actually have it a gable roof, which extends in, sort of acting like a clear story skylight. Great idea.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was envisioning, but I wasn't sure how far in it went. And I have one other question. Just sort of, it was on option B. Is the roof to the right of the main entrance, right there? Does that angle just right down to the front? Or is it
Yeah.
go to the middle?
No, it
Actually,
angles.
I think it flattens out about 20 feet in,
Okay.
I think. Hard to see if we go to option A.
I
Sorry,
wasn't
option
crazy
B.
about these roof lines in terms of water and rain and dripping and.
Yeah, I think that flattens out right about here.
Okay.
Um,
And on option A, I guess my question is, what does it do on option A? Is it similar?
Oh, no, this
Or
is
is it
just,
flat?
this is a flat roof, so it's got drains internally drained.
And if we wanted to, could we have some sort of a facade on the roof to,
Yes,
if
parapet,
we wanted to make it look higher or
Yes.
what have you?
right, good.
Okay.
Paul?
I am in absolute opposition of the little pointing towers, and less in favor of the idea of putting it into the walkway. If you think about what we did at the middle school, when we had those situations, they just had points for contention and leaks. It's not functional. So you're doing it for aesthetical reasons, I understand. I think the visual in option A is nice. I would like to see something where we put the wood on the granite. I like the wood to warm it up. The river ball thing sounds brilliant. I love that you can tie those two together. I personally like C the best, but I'm a more contemporary kind of guy. I get why that's not a draw for educators, but the cupolas to me you're just adding things that we have to take care of later for a visual that's not going to be long-term driven. It's just not, I don't see value in that.
Matt?
So I do also like option C out of this. Temporary feel is better, in my opinion. There's to me, more of a timeless look of this school. It also goes with more of a tech-centered one-to-one district that we are. The problem I do have with the cupolas and that, number one, I just think of Tri-City Plaza, I think of a mall, I don't think of an education space. And it gives me a Garrison City feel, which we're not over, so I'm not going there. But that's where I am in terms of, I like the last option.
I think the teachers like the tables.
Tim?
So I'll just weigh in on, it's just opinion, because I think it's the same thing, it's just some people are traditionalists, some people are contemporary. I'm a traditionalist, I like A best from the start. I spent a long time on the planning board, we're always talking about how can we make these new modern buildings look more traditional. Go to someplace like Stowe, Vermont, and they make everything kind of look like the original buildings in town, right? And I too live down on Salmon Falls Road, and so the cupola idea to me mirrors the barns and such further down on Salmon Falls Road, the old farming thing. But I do like the idea of some of the more modern, practical things like a standing seam roof on the, if you've got a pitched roof, putting a standing seam and mounting solar panels on it is a great idea. But I'm a traditionalist. I don't like the idea of wood because it's, I own a 200-year-old home and I paint it every 2 years. So the most maintenance-free items that we can use, I think, are the best. I don't know for your walkways, I know the last one you said was stamped concrete, but B you said was pavers, and how about A, is that also?
Can we go to
We were just trying to give you different options, so we can do,
Yeah, I'm a fan.
we don't have to
I'm
decide
kind of a fan
that.
of stamped concrete, so you can make it look however you want, and it's a good durable.
I think the way this was drawn, it doesn't corner us into any decision. It's really up to you. The way it was drawn is a more traditional sidewalk. It looks like there might be some stamped concrete patterns in it, but you could go with a regular concrete sidewalk. It's really owner's choice.
I like A for the reason that others have described already. I think it fits in with that neighborhood. What's your take on the argument that the cupolas will leak? Have you seen that in the buildings that you put them into?
So these cupolas are actually outside. So if it's built right, they shouldn't leak.
Well, our vision for the cupolas, if I'm here, is
It's kind of identification with main entrances,
Exactly,
right?
Well,
yes.
It's trying to fit in with the concept of also the metal panel roof is supposed to be an homage, as it were, to, the New England barn, the New England house sort of thing, right? We can very much go in that direction with these sorts of cupolas too. So the cupola roof, there's no reason why it should leak.
Right.
The paneling on the sides of these, we were envisioning a fiber cement metal panel system. It's not something that's wood and porous per se, but something that would be a little more resilient than that, but still we could apply some character to it with moldings and so forth. Is that? Yeah.
And we have not put any skylights in the building because we've designed it so that it can be daylit from both sides. So you don't have internal spaces that don't have light, or we put toilet rooms and things like that in those areas in the corners. But skylights typically are something we try to encourage, but we know eventually they do leak. So I think we're okay, but I'm hearing we may need to study this a bit more, these canopies and these elements, to maybe make them a little more modern, but still respect the farmhouse and the neighbors and the sound and the mechanicals.
Matt?
So, if this is the direction we're going, my pet peeve is when you go to any commercial zone and they have this type of cupola, and you look up, and you've got cobwebs, and there's a pigeon in there, and all this other random stuff that happens, right? And some kid flings something that gets stuck up there, they're laughing every day they come in. Like, what do we need? Nerf blaster?
It made, yeah, screens, metal screening that you can put in so that, you know, bees
Just the
and
zone
birds
for
and.
stuff to happen, and
Right.
there's a lot of maintenance that's a high up space.
It's true.
That's a staff injury situation unless we need more boom lists.
We have one.
I said more.
Paul, and then Matt.
I again am not a fan of the cupolas. I think it's dated. This is a brand new building or taking it, tie it. You're not gonna see this from the road, right? If you do, it's for a glimpse,
Right.
right? So trying to tie it to something for the kids to go there, they don't all live on Salmon Falls Road. If it's not tied into the school at all, if it's only attached to the canopy, I'd be much more inclined to say yes, but I think they're just aesthetically dated. I just don't find it to be appealing at all.
I would just add that the leaves will fall off the trees pretty soon, they won't come off for another 6 months, so we'll see it.
That's
Fair
true.
enough, fair enough, fair enough.
We'll see it from the room.
So-
Matt?
Go ahead.
I'm just, this piece of it, we can continue to work on. We don't need a, let's do this, let's do that. It's really the structural massing of this, and it sounds like most people are in favor of this piece. So that's really what we're looking for tonight, but we can continue to develop that.
Matt?
We were talking before the meeting, the bus, what do you call it, a colony? That it, we talked about it going, extending further down the bus loop.
Right down here, yes,
Yeah,
down here.
And so that could also be an option that we do extend it farther. And that second tower would be further away from the building, what have you. But the building I used to work in has a similar tower in the front, and it's open, wide open. And they have a small, there's literally an outlet on the ceiling underneath, and there's a box that clicks to keep the pigeons away. And you don't hear it until you're like right up close, and I don't know if you've encountered those. So those would keep birds and
Cobwebs will
pigeons.
still
Cobwebs might still be there, yes. Pigeons won't be there.
Sarah, it's funny.
Let me make one more
Yeah,
pitch
sure.
for number A, and it's from a different direction, but, so the reason that the old New England buildings were built like this is because we're Yankees and we're frugal, and cheap, a lot of people would say. But I don't have a problem with spending extra money for a roof that's gonna last 20 years longer. You know, I think that's a good plan. I have more of a problem with spending money on a decorative item that, a wood column that's gonna cost me money to maintain. So I think, I like option C as well. I like modern style buildings, but I think we'll get more pushback from the community if it looks like we're building a fancy, flary thing that we don't need, as opposed to a traditional building that's gonna last longer and get us more bang for our buck. That's the other side of it, perhaps.
Paul?
Mr. Toddy, how often do we have to repoint brick?
30 years?
Okay. All right, then just so anybody who's on the board, city councilors may not know, but the cost for masons is not getting cheaper. So just keep in mind, and I do like the idea that you're gonna put something on the bottom to protect the brick. The granite's brilliant, it's smart, it's easy, it's clean, it looks nice. But I just, as long as we're conscious of how long the brick has before we have to start taking care of the actual brick. 30 years is plenty, so that's fine. I just wanna make sure we had that.
It's a really good point, and there's a couple of really, there's some subplot things there to talk about. I do a lot of building assessments for schools, and you know, where the repointing of the brick has to happen more often is always down low next to the pavement. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine. English is probably tired of hearing me say it at this point. Also, the cost of masons is not cheap. So what we try to do is spend that money where it's going to do us the most good. So the ground-faced scenic view for the wainscot, less joints, less units. I see some nodding over here. So less labor. so less money. So we try to put the money where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So that's kind of why you're seeing sort of accents. You're seeing here the precast concrete, a little more money. It's probably on par with the brick. Don't want to put you on the spot, but we think we're around that neighborhood, but it gives you a little bit of nice accent where we're going to see it the most. We're not going to do it everywhere, and we're going to do it in the upfront portions where it's kind of, really prominent.
As I'm trying to listen to you all, I'm getting a sense that everybody likes, we're getting a consensus of A. But do I get a consensus of A without the gazebos? Does that take care of both
Without the
folks?
cupolas,
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be a debate back and forth for a while.
okay, so we're not gonna solve that right now.
So today.
I think they'll come back with maybe another design
Right.
option or two, replacing the cupolas with something else, so we
Right.
can compare it to another design.
So, do we need a motion to approve one of these, is what you're asking for?
I don't know if you need a motion, we just need a
That
direction. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I would be inclined to say, just a show of hands, I think A makes the most sense. We have some little things that we're debating back and forth, but everyone seems to be migrating that way. So structurally, as they were discussing, it makes sense for me. Visually, I'd like to see more of, in building A, where you have that bottom board and the brick up. I'd rather see more of that around the building.
Wait.
It'd be the way it's go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Parallel,
All the way around, even the side of the building, just match it.
Well, frankly, in my mind, that was our intent.
Okay.
This was so conceptual that we hadn't quite gotten there.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no worries.
yeah.
But I think overall, structurally, we're all on the same page.
Are you
So,
okay with it? I know you like C.
I think the cupolas are ridiculous, but if you
So
guys
we
really
can
think
look
it's
at another
value.
design for that part of it.
Yeah, but the
But
building itself,
the
with
roof.
the added value for the solar, the cover
Yep.
for the mechanical, like it makes sense. And I agree with what Brad had to say, it's more aesthetically pleasing with that pitch. I think it just looks more welcome. I totally embrace that. The little stuff we can nitpick later, but structurally, I think A is where we're kind of headed.
Does everyone agree? All right.
7-1.
That's all I care, it's on the record.
All right, so we have some classroom layouts to look at. We also have some cafeteria tables, so I know we're 45 minutes already, so I'm not going to read all of these. They're in your handouts, but this is kind of our dream futuristic classroom that we've developed. So it has biophilic design, it has technology, flexible learning environments, healthy learning environments for the different types of materials, as well as environmental controls for the classroom. So all of these things are in our minds architecturally as well as with our engineers as we're kind of moving forward. And the next slide.
So we've been looking at the classroom layouts and trying to refine the inside of the building and the guts of the building. So we're getting into this layer now. Today we had a wonderful tour of the East Rochester School, your most recent school, and a terrific conversation with the principal over there about what she likes and doesn't like about the building. So we've learned some things since we put this slide presentation together, but what we brought to you was our thinking yesterday. And we had a few options. Now we have a fourth option to discuss, which is what we learned today. So this is just the intro slide. The next slide would be the first option we were looking at, which was every classroom to have essentially a countertop, a 12-foot countertop with what we call a t-shirt wardrobe. This can be just storage with shelves, or half of it's shelves and half of it's a hanger. And then over cabinets from 12 feet. And then we're shooting for 25 student capacity per classroom. That's your maximum capacity in the classroom. So we're shooting for 25 cubbies, so that we can accommodate the largest number of students that might be in there. We've looked at all of your schools. We've been in all the school buildings. A lot of the schools have the hooks or the cubbies in the classroom. East Rochester does not. But talking about them in the classroom for the moment, This design has it so that when you walk in the door of the classroom, the cubbies basically are along this wall, the corridor wall as it were, and then it wraps the corner here, the idea being that they come in and they're changing their boots into their shoes and they're taking their coats off, and this is kind of the changing area or zone in the classroom, and then they're walking through their academic experience. The next slide, I'm going to go through these and we can go back. Is you're coming into the classroom, but it's sort of a corral arrangement where you have these aisles of cubbies. And by the way, we've done schools with all three of these options. So we don't have a favorite. It's really about how you guys want to work through the school day with the children. But it's sort of a half-height wall here with aisles for the cubbies, and then the same amount of cabinets and wardrobe along one side with the visual display, the marker boards and so forth, or the instructional wall being on the opposite side. The third option is you come into the classroom, you still have the display or instructional wall on the opposite side of the door, but your zone for changing from your coats and your boots are all along the opposite wall. And your counters and your wardrobe are on the corridor, opposite corridor. So right as you walk in, which is the way that it looks in East Rochester. They've got all of their millwork right up against that corridor wall. But in East Rochester, the cubbies, of course, are not in the classroom. They're in the corridor, and they really like it. They like it a lot. Next down the corridor a little bit, you've got 6 feet of clearance between those cubbies walking down that corridor. But they say they're very comfortable with it. It works for them. They have fewer classrooms per corridor than your new school does, so we have to keep that in mind as there's more students traveling through this school. But they're very comfortable with it. So their preference is actually to have the cubbies in the corridor because for a few reasons. It was really interesting to hear the principal talk. One was, I never would have thought of this, but when Jenny gets out of mom and dad's car and her clothes smell like cigarette smoke, and they put it on the hook, that's in the corridor, not in the classroom. They don't smell it all, which was kind of interesting. The other one is if Joey has a disciplinary problem and he needs to go home, the principal can go get his things and never disturbs the class. So everything stays outside the classroom. Was there another reason? No. So those were pretty enlightening preferences that we heard. So we're kind of looking for some direction as to which way you'd like us to organize this sort of feature.
Matt and then Paul.
I'm glad you heard from the teachers, because that was my concern. I mean, we can sit here all day and talk about it, but we're not the ones teaching in the elementary classroom and whatnot. So I'm glad to hear what their preference is, at least the principal and whatnot. I guess the way I look at it is if it's in the classroom, it takes up space, whether it's the corrals or whether it's the long line of them. That does take up space in the classroom that could be used for something else, some other instructional purpose. So I would be leaning towards having it in the hallway myself.
Paul?
I wanted to ask Mr. Toddy, if we had them in the hallway, how does it affect cleaning and maintenance for you versus in the classroom? Is there a big difference? Do you see any negative drawbacks, impending costs, stuff like that?
No, it's probably easier to have them in the hallway, especially if you've got foodstuffs in them that's being left overnight. We just make one pass down the hallway and clear it out. Like I said, bear in mind that footprint that it takes up in the classroom, it's going to take up an equal footprint in the corridor. And you've got fire egress concerns, so the corridor may have to stretch a little bit to accommodate that, but I think it's well worth trying to achieve if we can.
Yeah.
The depth, do you know the depth, I know I'm asking a lot, the depth of the ones at East Rochester?
We measured them today, so it's an 8-foot corridor with 1 foot on either side of built-ins, leaving a 6-foot egress. Did I get that right?
I think we're very close. I think that the actual clear depth is closer to 10 inches and change because of the construction of the cubby itself. But yes, I think it takes up about 1 foot of the corridor width on each side.
I'm gonna ask a question. So, my question is, upstairs, there's still a need for the upper grades to have the cubbies?
That's the way you have it in East Rochester, yes.
So I'm not so concerned on the first floor with them being out in the hallway, because opposite the hallway, there's like non-classroom spaces. But if you look at the second floor, that is so tight. If all of those kids are arriving at the same time, packing up at the same time, that's a lot of kids in the hallway on both sides. So I don't know if 6 feet would be enough comfortably
Yeah,
with everyone moving at the same time.
so we have a couple of choices. We can, first of all, the corridor in this design is ever so slightly wider than the one in East Rochester. We didn't know the width of East Rochester when we did this layout. This is 9 feet and a little change, whereas I think you have 8 feet in East Rochester. Because of the length of the corridor, we're much more comfortable with a 9-footer. If you wanted to, we could stretch it. You know, I think you've got enough room that you could stretch the corridor another foot wider, and it's not going to affect all that much. So that is a choice.
Just for safety, I just worry about, I want to make sure the hallway is not so congested that if there is an emergency, that they're
Right.
not able to
That's a good point.
safely evacuate quickly. Paul, did you have
I
another?
just have one more if I could.
Yeah.
What material are you proposing for the cubby? Same material you use Rochester or?
Probably plastic laminate,
Okay,
easy to clean,
yeah,
it's nice.
you're okay with that?
Any other comments, Matt?
The aspirational classroom design, is that what you want the place, what we want it to look like, or?
It's something we've developed over the years on, and we continue to update. It's like a living, master plan, if you will, of a classroom for the future. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to do every single thing in here, but there are things, it's like a checklist we'd like to
Okay,
go
so
through.
this isn't necessarily what it's gonna look like, this is
Right.
just you putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, aspirational is a key word. on
Yeah,
this.
I just wanna make
Yes.
sure that we
Yes.
clarify, given the traditional look outside.
Paul?
I am in opposition of number 2 wholeheartedly. I don't like the corral idea. If you get a bunch of kids crammed in there, somebody gets an elbow or stabs somebody with a scissor, it just sounds like a mess. But I think the outside of the hallway makes the most sense. If the superintendent and the staff at East Rochester and Mr. Toddy are okay with it, I think that's what makes the most sense to me. I do agree with you that, and Mr. Toddy said too, the egress, if we can get that to 10 feet without sacrificing the square foot per student measurements in the classroom, is something we should evaluate. But I like the cubbies in the hallway. Yeah, we were at East Rochester, got to see it in action. It just seems to flow well. Kids are very comfortable dropping it off and going in, and then they're ready, right? It makes sense.
I don't want to cut anybody off from the cubby discussion. There's a second half of this, which is the casework inside of itself. So in East Rochester, we were talking to the principal about the casework, and it was interesting to hear her say that there's never enough storage. So we would put 30 feet of linear feet of storage in here, and it wouldn't be enough. There's just never enough, right? Traditionally, we're used to doing most of our schools with a 12-foot counter. With
12 linear feet.
12 linear feet of counter with over cabinets like this, with a wardrobe that's 4 feet wide. So two 2-foot doors, right? In East Rochester, you've got probably about 18 feet of cabinet work, which is quite a bit. It can get kind of expensive. The arrangement is very similar to this. The only difference really being is that the wardrobe looks like a 3-foot wardrobe instead of a 4. But otherwise, the overall length is a good 6 feet longer or 50% bigger than what we're used to putting in. So we are kind of wondering if you want to go in that direction, or you'd like to stick to something more.
Matt, go ahead.
Mr. Toddy, do we have the concern with the floor, we go underneath these, do we want to spec out when the floor goes up to it?
Yeah, I would think the floor would just need to go up to it. I wouldn't worry too much about putting it underneath. I also wouldn't worry about the less built-ins. The classrooms at East Rochester are a little oversized. I think these rooms, correct me if I'm wrong, are a little bit smaller than those rooms.
Yeah, your East Rochester rooms are running about, I was looking at the floor plan we do add, it looks like about 925, 924 square feet. We sized these, I won't say lean, I would say compliant. We didn't oversize this building, so it's right size, so they're about 905 right now. That 20 square feet can mean something when you start getting into these kind of discussions.
So what we did at East Rochester is we had the built-ins, which we've all agreed it's never enough. So what we did was in the furniture lines, which is different, those are owner's costs, we put shelving, closed doors with locks on wheels. There was at least 2 per classroom. And those are very move-aroundable, that we can add or move storage without having to have the built-ins. You can get a much cheaper storage through those types of armoires on wheels, I guess you'd call them.
I would be more in favor of sticking with the design and adding another cabinet, not wardrobe, but like, you know, the similar size cabinet, but just with all shelving in the cabinet. I like, if we're gonna do this, keep the aesthetics the same, similar, and no teacher would argue against having another cabinet. Matt?
I definitely agree with that. And I don't know if you have a similar layout in your classroom. I work in a building that is less than 2 years old, a school that's less than 2 years old. And I have 3 of those cabinets, the tall ones. And they're all like 2 feet wide. And I don't know about you guys, I only bring 1 coat to school. So having 2 feet to put 1 coat, that's a lot of wasted space. If there's a way to make that a little smaller and more shelf space, that would be a lot more practical for a teacher.
So, a follow-up question to that is, in East Rochester, there isn't even a coat
I
hook
wouldn't even
in the
do-
wardrobe, it's just shelving?
That's what I would do.
And-
I don't use my coat rack, it takes, I wish it was shelves.
We just finished a school where they started out by saying they wanted we did all of phase 1, and then they kind of saw what they decided on, and they were like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then they just wanted shelves.
Yeah.
So we can do it any way you want. I'm not saying you shouldn't have something to hang your coat, I'm just saying
That could be a hook.
whatever you want.
That could be a hook. Paul?
I think understanding the function of wardrobe with shelving versus coat makes sense. I agree with that, but changing all the cabinet space to be, teachers never have enough space for anything. If you ask any teacher, they always need something else, right? And I understand it, education's tough, I'm not saying it at all, but I think that's a want, not a need. So I think if we really get there and we can figure out if we can do it without being super cost and efficient, and fine, add it later. But for now, I think what you have, let's see what the numbers come in at, because I don't want to add it and then take it away, right? I would put that on the wish list. The wardrobe to all shelving, I completely agree with. I do, because most teachers just put their coat on their chair anyway, right? So I don't disagree with that at all, but adding more storage is a bonus, not a benefit.
Yeah, Alex?
I agree with what Paul said, but I also want to ask, did the teachers give any indication about which wall they would like it to be on? What's shown here, where it's up against the wall that the door's on, against the corridor, it seems like it provides more usable wall space around the classroom, and so that would be my preference, but I'm not a teacher, and I don't know if they had any preference or were asked about that specifically.
Your teachers haven't given us any preference. We've found, our experience in other schools, that this is the preference.
Okay.
But
What would drive that, from my perspective, is, so the other wall you're gonna have is the technology wall, the smart boards or Prometheans or whatever, and you've got a wall of windows. The windows are gonna inform where the technology goes. and the wall that you're not using is the storage, right? Because you really glare on the screen is your, trumps everything. So that's the one you'll have to get right. Where the cabinets go, doesn't so much matter. The other place we didn't add is in K1 and 2, those counters probably have a sink in, which is gonna inform how they lay out in the room, because you want wet walls back to backs, you're only plumbing one drop. So that's another piece of that consideration.
And 6 and K1 and 2 was the last piece of the puzzle for the casework. We're gonna do it like East Rochester. So I think we've talked enough about casework, because they're trying to move me along here. Did you want to talk about we brought along with us a few examples of different cafeteria type arrangements. This is more of a furniture discussion, which I'm sure will be ongoing. We do understand that you guys have a preference for the long rectangular tables, and that's a more traditional arrangement. But we brought some examples of what is being done out there, and these images actually came from one of the vendors you guys use all the time, which we work with, so I'm sure they'll be able to come in and talk more about it. But this is a maximum density type of layout. It does, with the rectangular tables, it does allow for a side area for round, more communal type tables. This particular one, even though it's an elementary school, it's kind of a high schoolish, because it's kind of has like this counter area where you can sit only on one side for the kid who doesn't really want to sit with anybody else, which is kind of interesting. The next arrangement is more of a mix. So you have these rectangular tables, and even though these are kind of rigid shaped, they're still essentially rectangular tables. They have round, more communal tables that are breaking it up. And then this is essentially a booth in the center, which is just kind of a different way to break things out. We're hearing from schools that they'd like to have some options of semi-enclosed spaces, or at least spaces for the students to eat in a more enclosed or side area. One of the schools I work with calls it the lunch bunch, which I just love the word, the term, but it's basically with the kids who need a slightly more intimate environment to eat, instead of a whole separate room that completely segregates them. And then the last option is, it's really fun, but you can tell this was drawn by a furniture vendor. There's a lot of different types of furniture here. It has everything. So as we continue to push forward with looking at the furniture options, we wanted you to start with the gears turning about these things, because we're going to be talking more about furniture as Gordon is engaging with furniture vendors.
Paul?
My question is going to be for Mr. Toddy and Mr. Pusey. Looking at the cafeteria layouts, the first one reminds me more of the middle school type setup, and the second one reminds me more of the high school type setup. Could you guys just find out which works better for the staff and students at each, so we kind of understand, like, for embracing this? I understand why the square tables, that's what we have everywhere, it makes sense. The high school, I don't know how long we've had that furniture there, but it's been a little while. So can we find out from them if it's been beneficial for the students, one versus the other?
Sure.
Plus and minus?
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Just, they're different ages though. That's high school.
I
This is for
agree,
an
but
elementary
it's still,
school.
and I don't mean from I'm talking from a functionality standpoint. Does it work with those pieces of furniture or not? That's what I'm looking for.
Matt?
I guess if you could add to the list of questions, I don't know whether elementary schools, the classrooms eat together, or is it a free-for-all where they can sit wherever they want? I don't work in an elementary school, so I don't know. It might be more functional if it's easier for a class to sit in one spot versus a free-for-all throughout the cafeteria wherever they want to eat.
Well, just generally speaking, in elementary schools, and certainly in this one, they're going to be going to lunch in grade groups. So you might have 2, 3 grades together, and then the rest of and then your team can clarify
think consistency between all of our other schools is important, because when that table breaks, we're gonna replace it with another school's table. So I think consistency is needed. You can move around, have own shapes, whatever, you know, but, and with some cool colors on the walls, but I think we need to be more consistent to what we have district-wide. And that speaks to, and then staff, if they're coming to cover, they know how that table's gonna move, they have to move it. There's no training concerns, no less pinch fingers and stuff, so let's keep consistency. Oh, I know.
Paul?
What's the square footage of that room?
Well, these are all prototype rows with different square footages. There's no one particular one. The building that we're designing for you at Salmon Falls, that's where.
Oh, I see, this is just the,
These are
this is the
prototypes.
concept of the seating.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was wondering where the performance
Right.
section was. All right.
I'll just add, the more flexible seating for the littles, the better. I like the different options of the booth because there are kids that do need that more closed-in area so that they're able to access the cafeteria with their other peers. And I like the rounds, the long tables with the different types of seats. That's what we have in the cafeteria where I work now. We just got it 2 years ago, and it was the biggest hit with the kids. It's a middle school, but it starts at grade 5, and they really like it a lot. We also have high tops, so that's something else we could consider is doing high tops with stools, with backs, with no backs. It really changes the space, and you can also use it as a learning space as well. It could be another area when you're not having lunches to bring groups down.
I would propose that this is a larger discussion because you're talking about equity and consistency throughout all the schools, and it's really a much larger discussion than just the one school, but you're going to be heading down this road of doing layouts. You're going to be asking the furniture vendor to lay something out based upon how you'd like to do it in all of the schools. So we just wanted to promote some dialogue about that and give you a chance to think about it as you move further down the line.
All right, so next steps, obviously we're going to refine our building elevations and the 3D model that we have. We're going to continue to meet with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and review sustainability items. They will be here at November's meeting to present kind of their designs like we've done with the site and the architecture. We're laying out the structural grid, and now that we have the massing set from tonight, we'll be able to have a preliminary design for structural members. We've started to talk to Harvey on what is most cost effective. And we're just continuing to develop those documents. I think the 12th of November is our deadline so that we can meet an estimate provided to you for the December meeting. And we're going to start outline specs for materials, finishes, and flooring, cabinets, etc. Any other questions on architecture before we move on?
Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Alex Siller, and I met you last week or last month, and I'm with Time On, working with Hamilton to get a civil portion of this. I'll try and be brief. I know you've seen this before in some regard, but the site layout we chose had a full separation of bus traffic and parent queue drop-off. So the intent here would be to have parents come in and hit the queue line and go all the way around the building to hit the front entry and do drop-off in this area here where we have this extended island outside where you had your extended pergola or overhang. And the buses would enter the same way and come in and do a loop and drop off along this sidewalk and in that extended island. So with regard to safety, that's where we landed to have that separation and functionality of the site. It just worked out really well for the site constraints that we had for this particular site. You can see the site's relatively confined, but we had some good opportunity up in this area for potential playground area. And we have some nice green space down in this corner here, which is a nice size for some play fields or recreational use. And during the school day, when we don't have any bus traffic in this area, it's intended to be a do not enter from this side, and we could gate off any access here. And this could be either playground, additional rec space, and it could be some paved space for kids' use. And when we come into the site, you're going to have some green buffer space area to provide that sort of block to the building parking lot, so you have a nice view block there.
Alex, how many buses can fit in the circle
Uh,
at
we-
a time?
We accompanied 8 spaces.
8 spaces, so they
Yep.
can all fit in the circle parked,
Yep.
waiting, and then the flow, I guess we don't need to worry about the flow in and out for anyone else, but there's 8 buses that can fit in
Yep,
the
so
circle.
right, so we've started I don't start to see, so I apologize for that. So we stack buses along this, where the sidewalk starts here,
Yep,
and they just loop right around here, and then they exit
yeah. and then
up and
block.
around this way.
Okay, so it won't be blocked for their exit, for the first bus
Correct.
to get
Yep.
out.
Yep, and this circle is designed so that if this bus wants to leave, and these are all parked, it can accommodate
Oh,
to
okay.
get out. So there's plenty of space there for that.
Thank you. Paul?
Kyle, could I ask you a question? I'm going to put you on the spot. If you don't know the answer, it's fine. Relative to size, McClellan, Chamberlain, how many buses typically go through there in the morning? Would you know that?
Depends on the school, and a lot of times, like on the east side, there's staggered drops. So let's say 3 or 4 buses go to McClellan first, and 3 or 4 buses go to East Rochester first, and then they swap. So basically, Ms. Perkins and the bus company figure out their 3, 4, and 5 go to East Rochester, and then 6, 7, 8 go to McClellan, and then or East Rochester, Chamberlain, and then they switch. So 8 is the maximum number of buses we forecast being at this school. Doesn't mean they're all going to be there at the same time. So it's got the capacity to take what we think is going to be there all at once.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just to quickly run through a couple more features here. Obviously, staff, faculty, parking here. And we have some nice at-grade crossings to hit your entries, so that they have a nice defined path to the building entrances through the queue area if it's busy at the time. Also, there's loading and utility space back here where we've accompanied some additional space based on coordination with the district for shed storage, potential propane area here, generator, transformer, and hydrant, dumpsters, et cetera, in it back there. So, if there's any more questions yet?
Yeah, is visitor parking closest to the main entrance, those spots that are parallel to the
Over here?
drive? Yeah.
We haven't identified that. We certainly, as we're progressing, we can certainly add that in there.
Okay. Any questions? Matt?
Just on the parking that you have in the center, I don't know if you have it on different sides, the number of parking spaces that we'll have,
71, I believe, is where we landed.
and that will match what we need for that building.
Yeah, we were targeting around 70. So the next slide here, just showing our queue layout. We've accommodated 275 parent drop-off spaces. So this is all the cars, if they need to, off the street, not affecting bus traffic. This is a big ask for the site, and this is how we're doing it. So the queuing starts here, double stack, avoiding any aggravated crossings and looping the entire site back to where we have the buses enter their separate location. Quickly, grading and drainage, this is where we've spent a lot of focus the last couple weeks. We're intending to, because we have such a developed site at this spot, we have to go underground with our detention, and we're detaining and pre-treating and providing a proprietary treatment system, which is accepted by the state for their ART requirements. So that's going to all a lot of that's gonna be contained under our field here. So sometimes there's concern about putting it under pavement, but by having this large field here, it really gives us some flexibility to have a nice space so that it's easily accessed with a road, but at the same time, we have loam and seed on top as our surface street versus pavement, and cars parked on it. So we're gonna take advantage of some large diameter metal, aluminized metal piping, which is somewhat newer technology. It's not your corrugated metal pipe system that you see failing a lot, so it's a little bit different. It's got a nice coating. It has some nice history to it so far. So this site provides a lot of relief from this angle, this side of the site to this side of the site. So we have a nice fill area here where we can maximize our diameter of our pipe. So that allows us to really take advantage of that product and maximize our cubic footage or cubic foot price for that storage. And then we're doing all of our treatment with a proprietary device and discharging to the wetland down in this corner here. Sorry.
Yeah, Alex, is the paving, or is the parking area, is that going to be porous pavement or regular asphalt?
It's regular asphalt, and thank you for bringing that up. This site with the wetlands so close, porous pavement would be a really difficult sell because you're required to have such a big depth of gravel and storage underneath the parking lot to accommodate that. So with that, it'd be really difficult to provide that section in the grading scheme that we have, otherwise we'd have to move the site.
Okay. Matt?
So with your detention system in the field, is the only, so all of that water is gonna be funneled right towards our property next door, his backyard area, or?
So this is, so our site boundary is here. So this is where we've analyzed, so what we're required to do for state permitting is analyze the site in the pre-condition versus the post-condition. And the pre-condition has two-point of analysis. One is this wetland at this corner because the existing site goes that way. So that corner is getting 99% of your site anyways. The other bit is the Salmon Falls drainage system, which is only a fraction of the site. So we're just matching and mitigating flows to that corner that already experiences the majority of the site flow.
Okay.
Just quickly, this is what we intend to do. We already talked about the large diameter aluminized piping for detention. Pre-treatment structures, we typically go with a contact CDS. It's a continuous deflection device. Structure, it has a lot of history, approved by the state. Same with their Context jellyfish filter product for treatment, so you'll see that. I've talked with Mr. Toddy about maintenance requirements on these structures, and we've agreed that this is a good route to go for maintenance purposes as well. So this is a preliminary utility layout. We still have a lot of work to do with Banwell and our MEPs to finalize this, but all of our water and our electric's going to be brought from Salmon Falls Road and loop the site around our detention, and our mechanical rooms in the rear here. With that, we intend to work with the city to come up with the best solution for the water routing, and right now we are intending to loop our site through our easement to Ida Circle to make a nice loop connection so we don't have a fail on one side and not have access to a water line. Benefit both properties. Otherwise, we are intending to gravity flow out to a sewer pump and pump up to that same connection on Ida Circle.
Tim?
So I assume that all the plans go through the city's TRG technical review for different things. My question was, is any thought given to when all those 275 cars are in the queue, you have to get an emergency vehicle in there, you have to get a fire truck or an ambulance or something into the site. Is there a plan for that?
That's something we have yet to meet with the fire department on, and we are intending to do that, I believe, next month.
November 8th, right before this next meeting next month, we plan to have the police chief, fire chief, and public works all review these things from their point of view. Thank you.
Alex?
I brought this up last month, I'm gonna bring it up again. We are right at the 25-foot wetland setback. And we actually have a 50-foot wetland buffer. And so I'm not sure how much we're allowed to encroach on that. I spoke about this briefly with the head of our planning department a couple weeks ago. So you might want to check with the planning department on anything that, the implications of that. And, I'm not well versed in it enough to know what those implications would be, but I would suggest talking with them as well. And I know that also with a lot of buildings that are going in that are close to or are encroaching on the wetlands, they're asking for a lot of mitigation to be put in place, and there's very little space to do any mitigation there, especially when you're already pretty much at the 25-foot setback already.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. If we could quickly go back to the site plan. Oh, this is great, yeah, that's fine. Or one more. Yeah, this is great. So, as you can see, we are right on the 25, this is that bold dash line here. We're right on that line. The regs that we're following with the city require that we don't have any grading changes with this particular style of wetland. I don't have that particular reference on hand, but our intent based on the regs are that we're not grading within the 25-foot buffer. That's why we have this wall. Otherwise, we could take advantage of saving some cost, getting rid of the wall and just grading out. But we're protecting that 25-foot buffer at all costs. There's going to be some areas you'll see here that there's some existing conditions that will require us to make some mitigations within that buffer, but that's only because we have to mitigate something that's already existing. As long, otherwise, we're going to have some previous conditions that have been already constructed within the buffer that we would want, sheds, etc. So as far as we're concerned, we're doing this within the reg of the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
I'd like to go back to the treatment system right there. You said this is accepted by the state, you've used it before?
Yes.
Did you have any forecast on maintenance cost? I'm assuming it would be Mr. Toddy's budget that's impacted by this, and we'd have to build that into our 5-year plan. So do you have any kind of dollar amount tied to the maintenance?
At this point, no, I don't have the dollars to it, but that's certainly something that we can help Mr. Toddy develop through the process here.
That'd be great.
Yep, you got it.
Thank you.
So to wrap this up, next steps for site design, we're planning to submit our alteration of terrain permit with that layout at the end of this week, and then we're going to jump right into utility coordination, which is going to go right to a sewer discharge permit with the state. And in that interim period, we are waiting for our traffic study on the 27th, which was almost 2 weeks ago. That we did the traffic counts. The data just came in beginning of this week, so they need another 2 or 3 weeks to finalize the study. Then we'll have some direction from that point. And then we can coordinate with the city and develop the construction docs.
Any questions or comments? Alex?
On the alteration of terrain, how particular do you have to be about what's going to change with the permit, and is there flexibility to adjust after the permit is issued?
Yeah, good question, Matt. So They're particularly focused on where the water's going and how we're managing the water. Everything else, as long as we've accounted for the appropriate amount of impervious surface, that's what they focus on. Impervious surface versus pervious surface, grass, et cetera. As long as we're accounting for the appropriate amount of that and directing it to where it's going, this site's easy, it's all going to mostly one place with that regard. So we have some flexibility to make some small changes as we go. But as far as any major layout changes with roads, et cetera, that kind of thing would have to go back to an amendment.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Next is our owner's representative report. Mr. Bristol.
Thank you, and a couple of things that have gone on this month is we have prepared for both the SAU and your town administration the cash flow projections for the next 18 months on this project, so they have those now. We promised those last month. We've continued to attend all the planning meetings that Ingrid had mentioned earlier. Very successful visit to East Rochester School today. Tomorrow we're going to begin some of the geotechnical services, getting those underway. And Harvey's here tonight, but we're getting ready within another half a month to begin talking about the guaranteed maximum price. We'll come back to you, and I would say that it would be at next month's meeting with what the owner costs are going to be. So again, you'll have your amount of money that you have to spend. We'll have a suggested amount that's going to be things for the owners. One of the things we needed to get a drift tonight of some of the furniture things you did and didn't like, because that'll make a difference as to cost for some. But we'll have a very intelligent guess as to what we'll have for the owner's costs, and then that'll give Harvey what they have left for the building and the building costs. Then do their work for 2 months. Any questions on? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bristol. Next item is other, and I have one other I'll start with. This is for Mr. Rapucci. Now that our public forums have stopped, would it be possible for us to do a press release after each JBC meeting to update the public with any decisions that were made at this meeting? For example, last month, we made the decision we wouldn't be crossing over the wetland finger. Something like that. When those big decisions are made, could we prepare a press release?
Sure, you could add an agenda item to this meeting, and you could bullet point the items that you'd like in the release,
Okay.
and then we can move forward with that.
All right, thank you. And we will have a non-public this evening, but I would like to do it after public comment. Does anyone else have anything under other? Paul?
We've seen the site plans and looked at some things. I just have a question for Mr. Toddy and the architects. Waste Management produces methane. Methane's given to UNH for free, and I was wondering if there's a way we could possibly run a methane system at this new school. Is there a way we can transport it? Is it possible? Do you have a way to put it in the truck? If you could do some due diligence on that, and obviously if there's a way for us to reduce the cost. I think Rochester's been very forward-thinking in the way we do things with the solar and a lot of our initiatives to be very green. We did a lot of that with Honeywell, reductions of cost when we were trying to be Energy Star efficient. If we could figure out how to incorporate that and what it would look like long-term. And if it's not possible, it's fine, but I'd at least like to turn that stone over, if at all possible.
Absolutely.
Alex?
I certainly don't want to discourage investigating it, but I will say that the entire city council went to Waste Management over the summer, and we heard about nothing but problems with the UNH program, where they are having to flare off a ton of their methane there because UNH can't take it, because there are issues with their production facility at UNH. And also, I mean, that's a pipeline that's going all the way down there, and it's you know, I imagine that would be exorbitantly expensive to deliver that there.
I think my intention would be to kind of mitigate it to a truck, to do it by truck.
Yeah. No,
If we could find a partner who would do a delivery service and put out the bid RFQ, there's something like that where we had access to, because according to the drawing, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to do propane anyway, but the access to natural gas is not reasonable. methane is natural gas. So if we could figure out how to move it from point A to point B and work with it, I understand the constraints of having this. When it's piped in, you don't have a choice, right? If we could do it by truck, it's a little simpler. So that was my intention, but I agree.
Matt?
We talked at the very beginning of these meetings of doing a frequently asked questions page about this project, and I just did a quick look and I'm not finding it. Do we have that on our webpage yet? And what are the prospects of putting that on there?
So I think if I may, Madam Chair, I had kind of given that back to the JBC with a list of some of the things we heard and asked for you folks to tell me what things you consider are frequent, what things should be included in that. So that's the kind of feedback I'm looking for. We can certainly get that, I just kind of need some feedback from you folks as to what is frequent.
Add to the agenda for next month, maybe?
Sure. Yep, we'll add that, yeah.
Great. I have one other, I just wanted to allow Harvey Construction a second. They're not on the agenda because they've just newly been brought on board and there isn't enough drawings for them to do anything. But gentlemen, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and just say hi to the JBC, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of you.
Yeah, great. So I met a few of you during the interview process. Thank you for choosing us. I'm happy to be here. My name is Keith Kelly. My role at Harvey is Director of Pre-Construction and Planning. So I'm charged with all of the stuff that gets put in these drawings to get it to a point where we can talk about a GMP, to get it to a point where we can talk about going to construction, agreeing to that, and executing on it. And I'm liaison between all of these team members and our own team members back at RV to get into construction. So that's my role. I'm happy to be here, happy to see the progress that's being made. It was kind of a little hidden behind the curtain back in the day, but now it's nice to see some stuff going on. So thanks for having us, and happy to be here.
And I'm Bill Stevens. I'm the president of the company, responsible for what the company does. So we have worked in the district. We have worked with Kyle and Dave both. So we're really happy to continue the relationship and look forward to a successful job with you folks. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, anything else under other? Okay, I'd like to open public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the JBC? Please state your name, address, and limit your comment to 5 minutes.
Great, my name is Tabitha Davis. I am a resident in Rochester. Mr. Lynch, you may want to write this in your book. I agree with you. I know, shocker, isn't it? Option A, the gazebo. I don't think the kids are going to care about the gazebo. I know you guys already voted, but the flat roof, I see issues further down the line, and I know, I'm sorry, I couldn't catch your name, said about a warranty. What's in the warranty, how long is the warranty, and if something happens in the roof within a certain amount of time, does it cover it so the district doesn't have to pay for it? Mr. Pappas, you said about asking about classes eating with each other. I did work for the district, and I can tell you, 5th graders eat with 5th graders. Their classes do eat with each other. They sit at the long tables. The round tables are cool, but we all know little kids. They see a round table. If there's not enough for everybody, they're all going to fight about the round tables or the curvy tables or anything. I think just the plain, what they have now in the cafeterias would be good. Another thing is everybody, you guys are at the table. The people are over there on that TV, and the public is over here in the corner. We cannot see what they're saying and pointing at that TV, and barely even heard. The first guy, I am so sorry. I did not hear really anything that you said, because you were facing that wall and the public sitting there. Maybe if they can come on this one. I had to get up a few times, as you guys saw. and I had to look. I have no idea where the buses are coming in, no idea what parent pickup, nothing. And these layouts, we can't even read anything on the layouts, so I have no idea. So I'll have to wait until the video comes out to see what they were pointing out there. So, another thing is, involving the public before voting. Ask the public what they want, maybe even ask the students. You know, do you want this classroom and that? And I do agree with Ms. Harrington with the upstairs classroom. I did work in East Rochester, and the hallways are small, and they do have the cubbies outside, and fifth graders all go outside together, so it is very crowded. People cannot even walk. They got the boots, they got their bags, you know, kids, they throw things all around. It's not, that hallway does not look big, so the cubbies outside is not going to work. And the classrooms at East Rochester, they may be big, but they use every single space in those classrooms. All the desks, the stuff around the corners, there's still not a lot of room left. So if the new classes are smaller in the new school than they are in East Rochester, how is that going to be suitable? I worked in the district, I know how big these classes are. So maybe those are some questions you guys can ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to address the JBC? There being none, I'll close public comment. Next item is a non-public under RSA 91A3 2D.
Just, Madam Chairman, you don't want us to hang, you're not going to reconvene after we go.
Correct, we're only going to hold the civil engineer.
Mr. Bristol and Mr. Seller, if you guys can hang around for a few minutes?
Oh, that's what I want, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I knew someone should hang around.
All right, thank you. There being a motion and a second, we need to do a roll call. So, Mr. Fontenot?
Yes.
Mr. Bollier?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Deja Block?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
And Mrs. Harrington, yes.